A Greenpoint apartment's legal rent sat at $1,194 and change. It was advertised for $6,800. On East 62nd Street, a townhouse just cut $10,000 to chase a buyer. This is New York's real estate market in sharp relief. Enforcement at the bottom, repricing at the top, and a global supply squeeze closing in from the sides. The story spans 5 boroughs and jumps from 1974-era rent rules to 22/6 construction pipelines. It lives in individual addresses like 101 Greenpoint Avenue and 34 East 62nd Street, and in macro numbers like a 70% fall in U.S. City office completions. Let's connect the dots: what happened, why it matters, who's getting hit, and what the next 12 months may actually feel like. Start in Brooklyn and Queens. Since 2019, 31 buildings across Greenpoint, Williamsburg, Sunnyside, Astoria, and Long Island City were acquired under a business plan that, prosecutors say, targeted significant upside potential in gentrifying neighborhoods. In those buildings, 159 rent-stabilized apartments were converted to market rate. The change wasn't subtle. At 101 Greenpoint Avenue, a pre-1974 building, apartment 1F was listed in 2023 for $6,800 per month. The last legal regulated rent on record for that same unit, $1,194.38. Another unit, renumbered from 5B to 3L, was advertised at $4,800. The last regulated rent was $1,331.01. The alleged method was as important as the math. The owners used an exemption intended to encourage rehabilitation of seriously deteriorated buildings, but records show the properties were in average or good condition when bought. That's the crux. A law crafted to pull dangerous stock back into service is accused of being repurposed to push stabilized tenants out. After renovations, unit numbers were reassigned, an administrative move that, the complaint argues, made it harder for tenants and regulators to trace a unit's legal rent history. In total, prosecutors are seeking repayment of overcharged rent and damages for tenants across those 159 apartments. Think about the incentive built into the gap between $1,194 and $6,800, or between $1,331 and $4,800. Multiply a monthly delta in the thousands across 159 units and 12 months, and the pressure to test the boundaries of rent law becomes obvious. The suit also names a prominent figure among the accused, but the emphasis is on the numbers and the neighborhoods. 31 buildings, 5 communities, an alleged pattern of repositioning homes into luxury lofts with asking rents that in some cases topped $6,500 a month. You'll see the same public-private tension at the top of the market, but the mechanics are different. Take that Upper East Side townhouse at 34 East 62nd Street. It's 5 stories. It has 5 bedrooms. It stands on a site once owned in 1926 by Vincent Astor. In 2006, the prior structure was destroyed in a notorious explosion. By 2015, the lot changed hands again for $11.95 million. In 2021, the current owners bought the new construction for $18,000. They later listed it for $30 and then, in a single move, dropped the ask by $10K to 24 kilovales, $500K. A $10 million reset is a signal. It's nearly a 29% reduction from the peak ask. It doesn't mean Fifth Avenue is empty, walk it on a Saturday, and you'll see activity, but it does show how sellers are thinking in late 2025, heading into 2026. In calling the cut more aggressive, the owner acknowledged the environment has changed, and not just because of the season. He cited a new mayoral regime in New York and a broader U.S. economy that isn't as strong as many would prefer, with mortgage rates and unemployment as live topics. That's an on-the-ground data point from a high-end seller, 5 floors, $24.50 million, and a narrative that now includes a $10 million concession. Move from mansions to macros. In December 2025, practitioners described New York's market as stable overall, with demand holding for luxury multifamily, affordable and workforce housing, high-end retail, and Class A office assets. But the stratification is sharp. Lower-tier office and retail remain underperformers. Activity is localized, block by block, corridor by corridor, and stakeholders are watching to see if a new mayor's agenda shapes the next few months. The caution is warranted. Across major U.S. cities, office performance remains uneven, vacancies are elevated, and net absorption has been slow. Yet, there are green shoots. In San Francisco, a surge of AI investment has spurred an office tour rebound and supported rising office rents. Markets can pivot quickly when demand aligns with policy and product. In 2026, the supply side may do more to shape New York than any single policy. New office construction in the U.S. is at an all-time low, with completions set to fall by 75%. Three-quarters of the remaining pipeline is already pre-leased. That's a simple equation. As leasing demand increments higher, new large block options shrink. In supply-constrained cities like New York, that scarcity is expected to push top-end rents up and broaden demand into the next tier down. At the same time, industrial and logistics deliveries are projected to be 42% below their 2023 peak globally. Multi-housing development in the U.S. is down by more than three-quarters from its recent peak. Data centers are the outlier. Capacity is forecast to increase by 19% in 2026. That last point matters in New York, even if data centers cluster elsewhere. Global power demand from data centers alone is estimated to have risen 22.1% in 2025 and is set to more than double by 2030. In areas near major data center hubs, electricity prices have spiked as much as 267% for a single month during the last 5 years. Energy costs can reach as high as 26% of rental value, and buildings that integrate on-site power solutions are finding potential revenue uplifts of 25 to 50% relative to rent. When you connect those numbers to a city where top-quality space is in short supply and where utility infrastructure is finite, you start to see why owners talk about power in the same breath as location. The lease market is shifting along with expectations. More than two-thirds of people globally now expect high-quality, personalized, and wellness-enhancing experiences to be built into the spaces they use, up 5 percentage points since 2024. 6% of employees say their employer has a clear in-office policy, and 72% view it positively. But high-level acceptance isn't the same as high-level attendance. What moves the needle is experience. 73% say more greenery near their workplace would improve well-being. 74% prefer places that recognize and tailor to them. When employees rate their workplace experience highly, 82% also feel positive about attendance expectations. In lifestyle districts, those with entertainment venues, outdoor pavilions, and waterfront access offices can command a 32% rental premium. For New York owners weighing whether to retrofit or reposition older assets, those numbers are not abstract, they are underwriting inputs. The retrofit opportunity is also a survival strategy. In the 10 largest office markets with the most potential for repositioning, more than 130 million square meters of space sits at risk of obsolescence. New York is on that list. Owners increasingly weigh energy-focused improvements because acting earlier can yield a 55% higher return. Those are hard returns, not just green aspirations. With completions down 75% and three-quarters of the pipeline spoken for, reinvesting into underperforming stock is not just an ESG narrative, it's a path to rentable space in a city where the top end is constrained. Now, step back to the for-sale housing market that wraps around all of this. Projections for 2026 to a more buyer-friendly balance nationally, with mortgage rates averaging around 6.3% down from a 6.6% average in 2025. Existing home sales are pegged to rise slightly to about 4.13 million. Another projection puts the figure closer to 4.3 million. That's a range of roughly 170,000 homes, but both imply a modest thaw from the freeze of 25%. Prices won't move uniformly. In 22 of the 100 largest U.S. populators in Brazil, cities' prices are expected to decline. Many of those cities are in the southeast and the west. In Florida, 7 of the 8 largest cities are forecast to see price drops, with Miami as the exception. The steepest projected decline, a 10.2% fall in the Cape Coral-Fort Lauderdale metro. Next is Northport, Sarasota, Bradenton, with an 8.9% decline. For New York buyers and sellers, these nationwide forecasts do two things. First, they hint at rate relief. A mortgage averaging 6.3% in 2026 versus 6.6% in 2025 isn't a windfall, but it's directionally helpful. Second, they mark a market that's rebalancing. Across the other 78 of the top 100 cities, price gains are expected to be small, with a median increase around 4%. In a city where luxury sellers just cut $10,000 to get traction, the lesson is simple: pricing discipline is back. So what actually caused this reshuffle across New York segments? Enforcement and scarcity with a side of power. On the enforcement side, the rent stabilization case lays out a clear narrative. 30 to 1 buildings acquired since 2019, 150 to 9 regulated units converted, new unit numbering, and jump shifts in asking rents from roughly $1,200 or $1,300 to $4,800 in specific apartments at 101 Greenpoint Avenue. The legal mechanism alleged using a rehabilitation exemption where properties were in average or good condition goes to intent. The requested remedy, repayment of overcharged rent and damages, goes to consequence. For tenants, the immediate effect is obvious. For owners citywide, the signal is just as clear. Rent law is live ammunition again. On the scarcity side, the U.S. construction pipeline tells its own story. Office completions off 75% in 2026. Industrial and logistics deliveries 42% below their 2023 peak. Multi-housing starts down by more than 3/4 from their recent high. Meanwhile, 3/4 of the remaining office pipeline is pre-leased. If you're a tenant in New York who needs a new large block of space, that arithmetic forces decisions. Pay up for the best. Consider a high-quality building outside the absolute top tier. Or look at a retrofit with better experience, wellness, and energy performance. In parallel, data center capacity is set to rise 19% next year, with global power demand from those facilities up 21% in 2025 and still accelerating. In places near data center clusters, monthly electricity prices have jumped as much as 267% at least once in 5 years. That volatility filters through pro formas in a city where energy can be up to 26% of rental value. It's not just the rent that matters, it's the bill behind the rent. Businesses are trying to adapt. 92% of corporate occupiers rolled out AI pilots in 25. 88% of investors did the same. Yet only 5% say they achieved most of their goals. 60% of investors lack a unified technology strategy. 70% of occupiers do not have a change management framework for AI. Half say they don't have enough digital and AI talent. In a market where data centers are surging 19% and the energy/rent equation is tightening toward 26%, the tools to optimize footprints and operating costs are unevenly distributed. That adds another layer to the New York split. Well-capitalized owners can retool their assets faster. Others face slower leasing and rising obsolescence risk. Back to the street level. The Upper East Side townhouse is a case study in price discovery, but it's also a reminder that product matters. The home's limestone facade, bowed French windows, and mansard roof lead to parlor rooms with coffered ceilings and multiple fireplaces. It spans a rooftop deck and a basement media room. It's 5 floors of story and status, anchored by a site once used as a clandestine meeting place in World War II and haunted by a 2006 disaster. The numbers thread the narrative: $11.90 million in 2015, $18,000 in 2021, a list at $35,000, a cut to $24,000, $500,000. In a season where buyers want perceived value to move, a $10,000 adjustment tries to meet the market where it is. The building at 101 Greenpoint Avenue reads differently. Built before 1974, it fits squarely within New York's rent stabilization framework. It's now branded as a fully remodeled boutique luxury loft building. Units were listed at $6,800 and $4,800 in 2023, after prior legal rents of $1,194.38 and $1,331.01. The alleged renumbering from 5B to 3L, for instance, shows how paperwork can become strategy. The aggregate claim buy up 159 units converted across Brooklyn and Queens situates one building within a citywide affordability story. Connect those two properties to the broader New York narrative, and you get this. Demand at the top is selective, demand at the bottom is protected. Enforcement leans on exact rents, $1,194.38 versus $6,800. Asset pricing leans on exact asks $35,000 versus $24,000, $500,000. The mid-market faces a different set of forces. In 22.6, new supply is scarce, top-tier offices are constrained, and retrofits with better experience and energy performance are a viable path to revenue. That's why the numbers about greenery, personalization, and neighborhood amenities matter. 73% want more greenery near their workplace. 74% prefer tailored places. Use My Pleasant to prefer tailored places. 67% of people globally want to work in a vibrant neighborhood, rising to 74% among those aged 25 to 34. In districts with those amenities, a 32% rent premium is on the table. The policy backdrop in New York is evolving. Market participants describe the city as stable in December 2027, with continued demand for luxury multifamily, affordable and workforce housing, high-end retail, and top-tier office. They flagged underperformance in lower-tier office and retail and noted that activity is highly localized. They're also watching closely to see whether the new mayor's agenda will introduce meaningful shifts in the months ahead. The caution comes with a national counterpart. Across the country, office remains uneven, but there are pockets, anchored by AI and tech investment, where tours and rents are rising again. How does the 2026 national housing outlook fold into New York? Rate relief and liquidity, mostly. A projected average mortgage rate of 6.3% next year, compared with 6.6% in 2025, helps but doesn't transform. Projected existing home sales of 4.13 million, or nearly 4.3 million, by another forecast suggests transactions inch up from 2025's projected 4.07 million. Price changes will be city-specific. In 2002 of the 100 largest cities, declines are expected, with the steepest projected drop of 10.2% in the Cape Coral-Fort Lauderdale metro, followed by an 8.9% fall in Northport, Sarasota, Bradenton. The other 78 are expected to see small gains, with a median rise of 4%. For New York, the takeaway is more about negotiating leverage than directional price forecasts. Buyers will have more room. Sellers will need to justify their number, whether that number is $6,800 a month or $2,450 million. Zoom back into commercial real estate fundamentals, and the constraints are stark. Office completions are set to plunge 75% in 26, and 75% of what's coming is already pre-leased. Industrial and logistics deliveries are 42% below their peak. Multi-housing development is down by more than 75% from its high. Data centers are growing at a 19% clip next year. In tandem, power matters more. Global data center demand up 21% in 25. Electricity price spikes of up to 267% in peak months near hubs, and energy costs representing as much as 26% of rental value. Where owners can integrate on-site energy solutions, the potential revenue uplift 25 to 50% argues for investment. The gap between leaders and laggards is widening on the technology front too. 92% of corporate occupiers and 88% of investors have AI pilots running. Only 5% say they've hit most of their targets. 60% of investors lack a unified technology strategy. 70% of occupiers don't have the change management frameworks to scale AI. Half don't have enough digital talent. In a market like New York, where underperforming assets risk obsolescence and top-end supply is scarce, the winners will be the ones who can measure, retrofit, and market experience while controlling energy and operating costs at a time when those costs can climb toward a quarter of rental value. All of this sets up a deceptively simple causal chain. Enforcement tightens at the lower end. That keeps stabilized rents, $1,194.38, and $1,331 anchored within the legal framework, regardless of what a post-renovation ask might be. Scarcity tightens at the upper end. A 75% drop in completions and 3/4 pre-leased pipeline constrict choice. Demand refocuses on quality and experience. 32% rent premiums materialize in lifestyle districts. Energy emerges as a gating factor, with 21% growth in data center power demand and episodic 267% electricity price spikes. Cost control becomes strategy. Meanwhile, buyers in the for-sale market get a bit of relief. A 6.3% average mortgage rate would be a notch down from 6.6%, and sales inch toward 4.13 to nearly 4.3 million. Who's affected? Rent-stabilized tenants in Brooklyn and Queens, 159 units across 31 buildings, who may recover overcharges and damages if the case succeeds. Owners using renovation strategies that don't meet legal standards risk the same outcome. Luxury sellers, like the owner at 34 East 62nd Street, who just marked to market with a $10,000 cut. Office landlords holding older stock in Midtown or downtown, where experience and energy retrofits could be the difference between a stranded asset and an active one. Tenants needing large blocks in 26, who will face a market where 75% of new supply is already spoken for. And buyers citywide, who will negotiate into a national market drifting toward balance, with 22 of the largest 100 cities set to see prices fall and 78 expected to see modest gains around 4%. What's next? 3 practical movements define the base case. First, enforcement moves through the courts. The rent stabilization case seeks repayment of overcharged rent and damages for tenants across 159 units. Whether the defendants settle or litigate, the process itself is a deterrent. Owners in pre-1970 4 buildings will audit their files. Second, rate relief supports liquidity. A mortgage average of roughly 6.3% in 2026 compared to 6.6% in 2025 and projected existing home sales between 4.13 million and nearly 4.3 million suggest a market that can clear a bit more inventory. Third, scarcity shapes pricing power. With US 2250, office completions down 75% and 3/4 of that pipeline pre-leased. Tenants needing space will pay premiums for class, location, and neighborhood experience, especially in New York, where shortages of quality space are expected to be acute. 2 watch items will determine how far this base case stretches. One is power. Data center capacity is slated to rise 19% next year. Global power demand from those facilities grew 21% in 2025 and is on a path to more than double by 2030. In metro areas near data center hubs, electricity prices have already spiked as much as 267% in a single month over a 5-year span. If similar volatility touches New York's grid or its data-dependent submarkets, energy as much as 26% of rental value could become the decisive line item in lease negotiations, retrofit budgets, and underwriting. The other is policy. Market participants flagged New York as stable in December 2027, but they are watching whether the new mayor's agenda shapes coming months. At the state level, the rent stabilization suit is a loud reminder that legal frameworks can change business plans, as 31 buildings and 159 apartments just learned. There's also upside risk. Repositioning older inventory into experience-forward, energy-optimized assets can capture that 32% lifestyle district premium and enjoy a 55% higher return on energy improvements when work is done sooner, not later. For owners who can execute, 2026's scarcity can be a bridge to pricing power. The city will still be the city. Fifth Avenue will be crowded on Saturdays. Restaurants will be packed on weeknights. But behind the street scenes, the market is getting more precise. Prices are not just numbers, they are strategies. At 34 East 62nd, a $10,000 cut made a point. At 101 Greenpoint Avenue 1000, $194.38 and $1,331.01 made another. Between them sits the rest of New York, negotiating a year defined by softer rates near 6%, thin new supply, energized data pipes, and a new old idea: value is earned, not assumed. If you want calm, number-driven breakdowns of New York's housing and commercial shifts as they happen, stick around for the next one.